close your eyes and imagine a world where silence does not exist. Not because of noise, but because every object, every stone, and every flickering flame possesses a literal, audible vibration. A name that is not just a label, but the very frequency of its existence. There is a persistent shadow in our history, a memory of a time when humanity did not just speak to one another, they spoke to the world itself, and the world obeyed. We are told that the diversity of our languages is a natural evolution, a slow drift of phonetics over thousands of years. But if you look closely at the roots of our most ancient words, you find something impossible. You find a ghost, a linguistic phantom that connects the high peaks of the Andes to the burning sands of Mesopotamia. It is the first language, the mother tongue. Historians call it a myth. Linguists call it a proto-reconstruction. But there is a group of researchers who believe this language was never lost. They believe it was hidden. It was encoded in the only place where no king could burn it and no ocean could swallow it: the stars. Tonight, we are going to trace the phonetics of the cosmos. We will discover why the names of the constellations in cultures separated by thousands of miles sound like echoes of the same voice. We will uncover the frequency of creation that was supposedly used to lift the megaliths of the past. By the time this journey ends, you will never look at the night sky the same way again, because those points of light aren't just stars. They are the alphabet of a lost reality. And the most terrifying part? Some believe the stars are starting to speak again. But to understand the message in the sky, we must first look at the silence on Earth. 5,000 years ago, the world was a very different place, not just technologically, but perceptually. When we look at the ruins of the Sumerians or the Egyptians, we see impressive masonry. We see primitive tools. But we are looking through the lens of a modern mind. To the ancients, the world was alive with logos. In almost every major creation myth, the universe begins not with an explosion, but with a sound. In the beginning was the Word, the great breath, the primal Om. These aren't just poetic metaphors. They are descriptions of a fundamental truth that our ancestors took for granted, that vibration precedes matter. Standard history tells us that language evolved from grunts and gestures. It suggests that as our brains grew, our ability to label the world grew with it. But this creates a massive logical hole. If language is a slow, messy evolution, why do the oldest languages we know, Sanskrit, Ancient Egyptian, Sumerian, appear so incredibly complex and perfect from the very start? It's as if they didn't grow. They were inherited. Imagine a civilization that didn't use language to describe things. Imagine they used it to interact with them. In the old texts, there is a recurring theme: the true name. To know the true name of a thing was to have power over it. If you knew the true name of water, you could part the sea. If you knew the true name of stone, the stone would become weightless. This sounds like pure fantasy. It sounds like a bedtime story. Until you look at the stones themselves. Across the globe, we find megalithic structures that defy modern engineering. Massive blocks of granite weighing hundreds of tons, fitted together with such precision that a human hair cannot pass between them. No wheels, no iron tools, no explanation. What if they weren't moved by muscle? What if they were moved by sound? The legends of the Pacific Islanders speak of mana, a vocal power that could lift rocks. The Tibetan accounts describe monks using long trumpets and synchronized chanting to levitate stones up mountain cliffs. We dismiss these as legends, but we forget that every legend has a core of truth. The truth is that our ancestors believed in a unified field of sound, a single language that acted as a bridge between the mind and the physical world. But then, something happened, a fracture, a cosmic amnesia that we call the Tower of Babel. Most people think of Babel as a story about a literal tower. But what if it was a metaphor for a catastrophic loss of frequency? What if we didn't just stop understanding each other? What if we lost the ability to hear the world? But even in the aftermath of that great silence, the fragments of that first language didn't vanish entirely. They left clues that were deliberately hidden in plain sight. And the first clue is found in a place where no human hand can reach. If you look at a map of the world, you see borders. If you look at a map of history, you see eras. But if you look at the map of etymology, the history of words, you see something that shouldn't be there. There are words that exist in almost every language on Earth, unchanged for 10,000 years. Take the word for mother, ma, mater, mama, mat. Take the word for fire, pur, pyre, fire, agni. Linguists call these ultra-conserved words. They are linguistic fossils. They are the survivors of a world-ending event. But there is a deeper layer, a layer that mainstream linguistics refuses to touch because it suggests a level of global coordination that primitive humans shouldn't have possessed. It is the celestial nomenclature. If you travel to the deserts of Australia and talk to the Aboriginal elders about the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades, they will tell you a story of 7 women being chased by a hunter. Now travel to ancient Greece, they tell the same story. The 7 daughters of Atlas being chased by Orion the hunter. Now travel to the indigenous tribes of North America. Same story. 7 sisters, 1 hunter. How is this possible? The stars are millions of miles away. They have no inherent shape. A constellation is an act of human imagination. Why would 3 cultures, separated by oceans and tens of thousands of years, imagine the exact same story for the exact same points of light? The standard answer is coincidence, or archetypes. But the coincidence fails when you look at the names themselves. The star Sirius, the bright one, the scorcher. In ancient Egypt, it was Sothis. In Sanskrit, it was Sira. Vindaiskich plemenach, Cyrus. The phonetics, the actual sounds, are identical. SRS. It's as if a single group of teachers traveled the world and gave everyone the same map. Or, more likely, everyone already had the map, because everyone once spoke the same tongue. But there's something even stranger, something that scientists are only now beginning to realize. The names of these stars aren't just labels. When you analyze the frequency of the name Sirius in its original phonetic form, it matches the electromagnetic signature of the star itself. Think about that for a moment. How could an ancient person know the frequency of a star they couldn't even see with a telescope? They didn't see the star. They heard it. They understood that the universe is a symphony, and they named the players in that symphony by the notes they played. But if this language was so powerful, why did it disappear? The answer might lie in the great forgetting, and the realization that some words were considered too dangerous to be spoken on Earth. They had to be moved upward. Imagine for a moment that you are a guardian of the first language. You live in a time of collapse. The ice is melting, the ground is shifting, and the great cities are sliding into the sea. You realize that within a few generations, the power to move the world with your voice will be gone. The people who come after you will be shadows of what you are. They will struggle to survive. They will forget the math of the stars. How do you save a secret like that? You can't write it in a book because books turn to dust. You can't carve it in a cliffside because the wind will eat the stone. So you look up. You decide to write it in the only place that never changes. The names of the stars are not just names. They are a hidden library for the tongue. Every cluster of light is like a folder in a vast, invisible cabinet. The sounds we use today, names that feel old and heavy on the tongue, are often dismissed as simple translations from long-dead tribes. But those tribes admitted they didn't invent them. They inherited them from giants. What if these names are actually keys made of sound? If you say them with the right breath, you aren't just labeling a point of light. You are triggering something deep inside your own blood. The human body is mostly water, and we know that sound can shape water into beautiful, complex patterns. If you play a high, clear note, the water becomes a flower. If you play a harsh, broken note, the water becomes chaos. The first language was a perfect note. Speaking it kept the body in harmony. It kept the mind open like a wide window. But when the frequency was broken, we became heavy. We became slow. We became mortal. But the keys are still there, hanging over your head every night. The stars are a constant broadcast, a hum that keeps the universe from falling apart. Our ancestors knew that if we ever lost our way, we could look up and read the world back into existence. But there's a problem. The map has been changed. To find the original code, we have to look where no one else is looking. If you want to find the true origin of a map, you don't look at the center of the empire. You look at the edges. You look for the places where time has no teeth. Deep in the high mountains of the East, there are people who speak in a way that sounds like nothing else on Earth. To a modern ear, their speech isn't speech at all. It is the sound of stones clicking together. It is the whistle of the wind through a narrow canyon. It sounds like it fell from the sky, fully formed. When you compare the rhythm of these mountain songs to the star maps of people on the other side of the ocean, something impossible happens. The math matches. The meaning of the words is different, but the way the breath moves is identical. It's as if two different choirs were trying to sing along to the same invisible radio station. Now think about the old temples scattered across the globe. We are told they were places of worship. But what if they were something else? What if they were built to catch a sound? Every temple was designed to resonate with one specific star. When that star was directly overhead, a priest would stand in the center and speak its name. The stone walls would catch that sound and bounce it back, making it louder and stronger until the air itself began to shimmer. It was a bridge made of vibration. This wasn't religion. It was a way to keep our brains in sync with the sky. The stars are constantly spitting out energy and light. By speaking the first language inside those stone chambers, the ancients were literally drinking that data with their ears. They weren't just watching the stars, they were becoming them. But this global network needed a heart, a place where the very first sound was uttered. And the oldest records say that place wasn't on dry land. It was a place that was swallowed, a place that left a hole in our memory. The source of the sound. In the late 1800s, a man was sitting in a dusty basement, cleaning broken pieces of clay. He was a translator, a man who spent his life looking at tiny scratches in the mud. But on that day, he found a story that shook the foundation of everything he believed. It was a story of a great flood, written long before the ones we know. But the water wasn't the point. The point was the end of the harmony. Before the flood, the tablets say the ears of men were open. They could hear the music that the planets make as they move through the dark. They lived for hundreds of years because their bodies were kept in rhythm by the world around them. And then, the shattering happened. Something in the sky changed. Maybe it was a comet, or maybe the Earth itself tilted. Whatever it was, it messed with the magnetic pull of the planet. Suddenly, the temples went quiet. The stones stopped humming. The human voice, which once had the power to shape the world, became thin. It became broken. This is the real story of our fall. We didn't just lose a garden. We lost our ability to resonate. Imagine the terror of that first generation. One day, you can talk to the trees and they understand. The next day, you are shouting into the wind and nothing happens. We became orphans. The survivors realized the language was fading from their minds. As the earth changed, their brains changed too. They were literally forgetting how to make the sounds that mattered. In a race against time, the last speakers gathered. They knew they couldn't save everything. It was too big. So they made a choice. They took the most important frequencies, the ones that control life and death, and they anchored them. They wove them into a story that every child would have to learn. A story told every single night for 10,000 years. The signs in the sky were not just pictures. They were a way to remember how to move the mouth. Every sign was a cluster of sounds from the first language. By teaching us to track the stars, the guardians ensured we would keep saying the words. We are carrying a message we can't even read anymore. But why were they so afraid of losing it? What was hidden in those sounds? To understand why the first language was so dangerous, you have to look at the men who tried to find it again. One man in the 1600s was obsessed with the idea of a universal tongue. He spent his entire life staring at ancient scripts, convinced they all came from one mathematical source. He believed the first language wasn't made of words at all. It was made of breath. When you speak today, your words are just labels. The word for fire doesn't burn. The word for stone isn't hard. But in the first language, the sound was the thing itself. If you said the word for light, your throat would vibrate at the same speed as a beam of sun. Your mouth would shape the air into a physical pattern that allowed light to appear. This is the secret the old schools guarded with their lives. They knew the universe is a projection, and sound is the code that writes it. Look at the Great Pyramids. We always ask how they were built, but what if they weren't built with sound, but as a sound? The dimensions of the inner chambers are a physical version of a musical note. If you hum the right tone inside that room, the whole mountain of stone starts to shake. The ancients were using these structures to broadcast the first language back into the earth. They were trying to keep the planet stable. They believed that if the human song ever stopped, the earth would fall apart. The volcanoes would wake up. The weather would go mad. They were the choir of the earth. In hidden vaults and lost libraries, there are still whispers of songs that can boil water or cool a fire. Short sequences of sound that change the elements. We call it magic, but they called it science. There is a reason you've never heard these songs. There is a reason they don't teach this in school. It wasn't just lost, it was stolen. It was erased by people who realized that if you can talk to the stars, you can't be ruled. Why is it that whenever someone gets close to the truth of sound, they are silenced? Think about the great library that was burned. We are told it was an accident, but what if it was a hit? The scrolls in that library weren't just poems, they were keys to the sounds. They held the exact way to pronounce the names in the sky. When that building fell, the world went dark. Not because we lost books, but because we lost the frequency. Since then, there has been a massive effort to make language simpler, to strip away the hum. If you look at how we speak now, we use fewer sounds than our grandfathers did. Our voices have become flat. Our speech is efficient, but it has no depth. We have been moved from a world of 3 dimensions to a world of 1. Why? Because sound is the ultimate tool for freedom. If you can change your own frequency, nobody can mess with your head. You can't be controlled by fear. You become your own instrument. The people in charge long ago realized that if we all kept the first language, their power would vanish. So they gave us different dialects. They gave us slang. They broke our unified song into 1,000 tiny pieces. They turned our music into noise. And then they took the names of the stars and hid them behind myths. They told us the stars were just gods or animals or gas. They wanted us to look up and see a silent sky. But the sky is not silent. Even today, our telescopes are picking up bursts of energy from deep space. We call them radio bursts. But when you look at them closely, they don't look like static. They look like parts of a sentence. They look like the first language. And this is where the mystery stops being about the past and starts being about right now. We live in a world that is literally stitched together by invisible threads. Everything around us, our phones, our satellites, the devices in our homes, runs on waves we cannot see, but that pierce through us every second. We are finally returning to the understanding that the world is not a collection of solid objects. It is an ocean of vibrations. But there is one problem. We are using dirty frequencies. Our modern world is filled with a constant, harsh hum that our ancestors would have found agonizing. It is a noise that keeps us in a state of subtle, barely noticeable anxiety. It works like radio interference, preventing our internal antennas from catching the signal coming from the stars. But now, people are appearing who are trying to hack this code. They are studying how sound affects living cells. They have discovered that our body is not just a bag of chemicals. It is a highly complex musical instrument. When researchers looked at the structure of our foundation, those very spirals where our life is written, they didn't just see chains of connections. It looked like a sentence. There was rhythm. There were repetitions. There was the structure of something that was meant to be spoken out loud. Your foundation is not a chemical report, it is a text. It turns out that these living spirals can be reprogrammed with sound. If you speak the right frequencies, the cell begins to rewrite its own instructions. This brings us back to the mystery of the stars. The ancients were not primitive. They were sound engineers. They knew that by naming the stars, they were preserving the remote control for human biology. Every night, as the Earth turns, we are bathed in the frequencies of the constellations. At the moment of your birth, the sound map of the sky is imprinted on your nervous system. We are used to calling this fate or the influence of the planets. But in reality, it is a sound imprint. You are a song written by the stars. And the reason the world feels so chaotic now is that we have forgotten how to sing our part in this choir. But the signal is getting stronger. The Earth's magnetic field is weakening, and the noise of the modern world is starting to glitch. For the first time in thousands of years, people are starting to hear that whisper again. We have come a long way, from the massive stones of the past to the invisible codes inside us. We have seen how a lost language can hide in the names of the stars we speak every night. But one question remains that has no answer. If the first language was a technology of creation, if it could move mountains and change light, where did we get it from? Did we invent it ourselves? Or did we hear it? There are those who believe that the first language does not belong to humans at all. They believe it is the native speech of the universe itself, a language spoken by those who live in dimensions we cannot touch. If this is true, then the story of the Tower of Babel was not a story of punishment. It was a story of a mute button being pressed. Perhaps we were not ready for such power. Perhaps we used the word to destroy rather than to create. And so our voices were muffled. Our ears were closed. We were placed in a linguistic quarantine. But the stars are still there. They are the emergency broadcast system of the cosmos. They are waiting for us to remember the password. Maybe our search for signals from space is not a search for alien civilizations. Maybe it is a subconscious desire to find our own lost voice. Are we looking for them, or are we looking for that very language? And if we find it, if we finally speak the true name of the Earth, will the world respond? Or have we been silent for so long that we have forgotten what it feels like to be heard? The next time you are under a clear night sky, look at Sirius or Orion. Don't just look, listen. Try to feel the vibration of that name in your chest. The most important revelation in history may be found not in a book, not in a tomb, and not in a laboratory. It may be hiding in the silence between two heartbeats, in the silence that is waiting for a single word to be broken. The question is, are you brave enough to speak it? Thank you for staying with me on this long journey through the echoes of the past. I know this was a lot to take in, but some stories are too big to be told in a few minutes. They require time. They require a quiet mind. We've looked at the stars and we've looked at our own voices, but I want to know what you think. Do you believe that there is a power in certain words? Have you ever felt a resonance when hearing an ancient language or a specific sound? Write your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I love seeing the theories you bring to the table. If you found this exploration valuable, please consider subscribing. We have many more mysteries to uncover, many more silent histories to bring back to life. My name is The Forgotten Knowledge, and this has been a journey into the star code of the first language. Until next time, keep listening. The universe is speaking. You just have to find the right frequency.